Every afternoon I went there to read my favorite book. One spring day, when I was reading the story of Manoah for the 13th time, I looked up and saw a woman standing before me. I thought it was my mother, come to fetch me home for the chores. Then I saw that she was not my mother, and that she had wings on her back. She said to me, "Your prayers have been answered, little boy. Tell me what it is you want most of all, so that I may give it to you." I was very frightened, but after a minute I managed to say, "Most of all, I would like to be helpful to other people, especially children." Then she disappeared. Suppose I told him that, and then how the next day in school I couldn't spell a word and was kept after school, and how that night I slept on my spelling book and knew everything in the book when I woke up. What would he say to that? Preface by Thomas Sugrue. The story of Cayce properly belongs in the history of hypnosis as a chapter in evidence for the theories of Armand Marc Jacques de Chasthenay, Marquis de Puysegur. It was de Puysegur, not Mesmer, who in 1784 discovered hypnotism. De Puysegur's famous subject Victor went into a sleep instead of a convulsion while being magnetized, and in that state showed remarkable intelligence and apparent powers of clairvoyance. Further experiments brought the same results. Other patients, when put to sleep, showed like powers. Walter Bromberg, in The Mind of Man, says, "Dull peasants became mentally alert and could even foretell events or understand things ordinarily obscure to them. Somnambulists made medical diagnoses in other patients brought before them and foretold the future. The magnetizer of the 1820s merely brought his patient before a competent somnambulist and waited for the diagnosis. If only modern science had such aids. The clairvoyance of somnambulists became a fascinating game." But the fascinating game was not encouraged, either by the French Academy or by the medical profession, and it suffered the fate of other fads. A generation later, Andrew Jackson Davis, the Poughkeepsie seer, was practicing medical diagnosis by clairvoyance in America, but he remained obscure and is not even mentioned in textbooks and histories of hypnotism. Hypnotism, in fact, will have nothing to do with clairvoyance. It has renounced its own mother. Edgar Cayce practiced medical diagnosis by clairvoyance for 43 years. He left stenographic records of 9,000 of these diagnoses to the Association for Research and Enlightenment, Incorporated, along with hundreds of complete case reports containing affidavits by patients and reports by physicians. There are hundreds of people throughout the United States who will testify at the drop of a hat to the accuracy of his diagnoses and the efficacy of his suggestions for treatment. He did not use his ability except to prescribe for the sick and to give spiritual advice and vocational guidance when these were specifically requested. He never made any public demonstrations of his powers. He was never on the stage. He never sought any publicity. He did not prophesy. He did not seek wealth. Often, his economic status was quite precarious. At best, it never rose above modest security. During the period of the Cayce Hospital, he was paid only $75 a week for his services. His unquestioned personal integrity, plus the excellent and voluminous records of his work and the long period that they covered, made him an ideal subject for scientific study. But scientists shunned him. He and his friends regretted this. It might have been more evidential if they, not I, had made this report. I first met Edgar Cayce in 1927. At that time, I made most of the preliminary notes and sketches for this book. Since then, I have continually added to the material, enjoying the complete cooperation of the members of the Cayce family and being accorded access to the files at all times. From June 1939 to October 1941, I was a guest in the house on Arctic Crescent, seeing and interviewing Mr. Cayce every day and examining material from the files. I spent many summers at Virginia Beach, particularly those of 1929, 1930, and 1931. In addition to the members of the Cayce family, I have had the good fortune to know intimately most of the other characters in the story. One of the first and most important contributors to my dossier was Mr. Cayce's father, the late Leslie B. Cayce. Another was Carrie Salter House, who, with her husband, the late Dr. House, and her son, Tommy, were invaluable aides and staunch friends through the years. I was not privileged to know Mr. Cayce's mother. She died in 1926, but her children and her grandchildren have described her to me so often and so well that I feel her portrait, as I have drawn it, is an accurate one. I knew Mrs. Cayce's mother, Mrs. Evans, and Gray Salter, like the Cayce boys and Tommy House, has long been a friend. I have known two of Mr. Cayce's sisters, Anna and Sarah, for many years. Other members of the Cayce and Salter families I have met and talked with from time to time. All have aided me, and by comparing and paralleling the reports they gave me of incidents and conversations with those of other participants, in many cases I have been able to arrive at that rounded, objective viewpoint of events which is the biographer's goal. On the other hand, I have gradually acquired a knowledge of and a fondness for all these people which is comparable to a novelist's feeling for the characters he has created. That is why the biography, in many parts, reads like a family chronicle. The Norfolk and Virginia Beach study groups of the Association for Research and Enlightenment have been of great help to me, as have been the staff members of the association, particularly Miss Gladys Davis, Mr. Cayce's secretary for 22 years. In the end, however, it was Hugh Lynn Cayce who not only led the horse to water, but made him drink, and it was my wife who acted as typist, proofreader, editor, and nurse to my crotchets and doldrums. To them, I am deeply grateful. If I have done a good job, it is because of them and despite myself. I last saw Edgar Cayce in August 1944 when he visited me in Florida. He was weary then, tired to the depths of his being. He talked eagerly of the future of the association. He spoke wistfully of the time when he might retire. He liked the warmth and brightness of Florida. He loved the Australian pines that grow near the water. "Pick out a place for me here," he said, "and I will come back and stay." He went home the next day. His last letter to me, written in longhand, on the stationery of the Hotel Patrick Henry in Roanoke, was dated September 11th, 1944. It said in part, "My hands won't let me use the machine. I doubt whether you can read this, but I hope you can make some of it out. I am not doing too well. Sort of a stroke, I guess. They have come in a kind of series. I hope to get back to work for a while yet, and I want to hold out until the boys get home. I can't much more than put on and take off my clothes. I can't tie my shoelaces or knot my tie. But I am hoping to be better soon. There is so much to be done, and so many who need help." May 11th, 1945, Clearwater Beach, Florida.